hello everyone and welcome for the first class of 2021 for the weekly Q&A. Glad to have everyone here. I hope everyone had a safe and wonderful New Year's and New Year's Eve. Not a lot on the agenda for today, so like I said, we took a couple questions from the email that people sent to us. We'll be talking about the top missed questions, couple updates, and then we'll open it up to see if anybody else has any generic or general questions moving forward. So like I said, for this Sunday, we will talk about the course updates. We'll go over the top missed test questions. I think I've got 11 or 12 of them in there for the private pilot class. And then from there, we'll just kind of open it up and let people answer any questions. Doesn't have to be, private pilot related. Could be anything, honestly. And then in addition to that, I did see a bunch of questions that were missed for the weight and balance. So we're going to do a few of those weight and balance ones as well. If you are on Facebook or YouTube, please, when we go through the questions, write it down on a piece of paper. Don't give away the answers to other potential students. If you are on our website, or if you want to scooter over to our website, you can always do so and answer the questions that are basically going to come up in real time. Okay, so other than that, the other thing that I do want to mention is those upcoming courses. So with those upcoming courses, we have our CFI ground school, which is starting on January 19th. So that'll be the first one for this year. And then we actually have new classes starting basically every single month at this point. We did nail down a date for the remote pilot drone class. So that's basically your Part 107 class if you want to fly drones commercially or for commercial purposes. That is going to start on Monday, January 25th. It's going to run for 2 weeks and end on February 5th. It is a total of 6 classes, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, 5 p.m. to 8:30 p.m. We will go ahead and put up the details on Facebook a little bit later this afternoon, and there will be a registration page, and all the details and information will be there, the times and all that stuff, just like what we normally do. So that'll be up a little bit later this evening. In addition to that, we also have our G1000 class coming out, and that is slated to come out the first quarter of 2021. So with that, basically the next couple weeks, my role here is really to take some time and basically work on the instrument classes. We're actually in the process of re-recording them. So that's what we're doing here in the studio today. And that's kind of the game plan for the next couple weeks to kind of get everything up to date. In addition to that, like I said before, because we are at the very, very end of the private pilot class, we said we would hold the holiday open until the 6th. Remember that those that are taking the free online private pilot ground school, that will actually close out on Wednesday, the 6th. So if you do want lifetime access, this will go away for those that are participating in that class. And that does give you access to basically all of our ground school programs minus the CFI. So that does give you access to the private pilot ground school and the oral prep class. So instead of being 12 lessons that are 4 hours apiece, it's about 60 lessons that are broken into smaller segments and a little bit more bite size. That is a little easier to digest in that sense. The oral prep class there is basically there to effectively help you prepare for the check ride. We have the instrument ground school as well. So same kind of setup as the private pilot. If you're used to seeing the private pilot, it's really no different other than content. So that is roughly about 50 or 60 classes by the time we're done here. And like I said, we're going to spend the next 3 weeks re-recording everything and actually expanding upon it. We have the Part 107 commercial ground school. So that's the class coming up, but that is also included in there. The for-flight course, the G1000 course coming out in this quarter. We have the commercial ground school. You get 20% off of the t-shirts, the complete training. And then in addition to that, you also do have the ability you're not going to have to be imposed by that deadline of the 6th to finish the final exam. If you need more time, we understand that things happen, life happens. You'll basically get unlimited time, and then any updates that we ever do, they'll basically be pushed out for you. In addition to that, keep in mind that we do have a lot of changes coming up, a lot of exciting changes. So we're going to announce some things towards the end of January. A lot of things in terms of the functionality, design of the website, and a bunch of other things that we've had in the works for several months are going to be launched hopefully at the end of this month. So stay tuned for those announcements. Like I said, that is going to be kind of a complete 180, and I think it'll be for the better. And I really think that it will be a good platform to work on. In addition to that, we were saying the first 100 students, so I think we had 21 left when I actually looked at it. So there is 21 left, and you basically get a 1-hour ground instruction lesson with an instructor. We usually do those over Zoom unless you're local in the California area, then you're always welcome to come to our offices, depending on the situation with COVID here in California, because we're still unfortunately in a lockdown. In addition to that, anything else that we develop in the process, you will also have access to. So keep in mind that I think it's going to be end of February or early March. We're still waiting for the exact date, but we will have the app out at that point. So the app will be good for both the Android devices and the iPhone devices, or Apple devices, that is. So you'll actually be able to download the course in its entirety, including the videos, the tests, the quizzes, all of that. Have the same functionality that you have on the website, but more in a mobile platform. So if you are on the go or anything else like that, that will be coming out. Okay. So if you have any questions about that, then feel free to let us know, and we'll fill you in. But let's go ahead and go over the test questions that are slated for today. Like I always said, we're not going to waste too much time on this. I appreciate you guys hanging out with us on your Sunday and taking your time. So if you have any test questions that you ran into problems with, please let us know what the full test question is, and we'll see if we can work it in. But these are the ones that we noticed. And it's really a variation. So these are everything from airspace to weather. And there's like I said, there's about four different weight and balance ones that we'll work through as well, just to make sure everybody is understanding them. I don't particularly like the weight and balance ones. They take a lot of time. That's just me. But we'll kind of break them down to make them nice and easy for everybody. All right, so moving forward, your first test question is, and like I said, I will open up the poll, and it is going to be open only on the website. I'll give everyone about 60 seconds to answer the question, but the first one is: absence of sky condition and visibility on an ATIS broadcast indicates that, is it A, weather conditions are at or above VFR minimums, B, the sky condition is clear and visibility is unrestricted, or C, the ceiling is at least 5,000 feet and visibility is 5 statute miles or 5 miles or more? All right, got half the class with their answers in. Remember, if you are on wonderful YouTube or Facebook, just write it down on a piece of paper or take a mental note in your mind. Answer it there, so that way you don't give away the potential answers to your fellow students. And for those that are on our website, you guys and gals know exactly where to click in order to find the test questions and the actual poll itself, right? All right, so let's go ahead and take a look at it. We have about 60% of the class with A. We've got about 20% with B and 20%, the other 20% with C. So correct answer here is actually going to be C. This is one that I keep seeing a lot of people miss. So anytime we have a ceiling that is at least 5,000 feet in visibility of 5 miles or more, that is when you're going to basically find this absence of sky conditions and visibility on the ATIS broadcast. Now, the reality is that in most ATIS broadcasts, this is what the test question relates to. But, you know, flying on a day-to-day basis, I always hear sky conditions at 9,000 feet. And, you know, visibility is effectively, you know, clear in a million, or 10 plus if you want to think about it that way. And they don't actually, they still report the exact conditions. But in this case, if you ever came across an ATIS broadcast and it didn't provide any type of cloud coverage or visibility conditions, then you can assume that it's at least 5,000 feet and 5 statute miles or more, or better in those circumstances. All right, good job, everybody. Next one we have is the phraseology when we call flight service station. So with the phraseology, you're going to be flying HAWK November 666 Charlie Bravo. The proper phraseology for initial contact with McAlester Flight Service is, I'll give everyone about 60 seconds on this one. Is it going to be A, McAlester Radio HAWK 666 Charlie Bravo, receiving Ardmore Vortac over? B, McAlester Station HAWK 666 CB, receiving Ardmore Vortac over? Or Charlie, which is McAlester Flight Service Station HAWK November 6 Charlie Bravo, receiving Ardmore Vortac over? Alex, that question is specifically only dealing with ATIS. So AWAS has its own issues. It can't actually figure out clouds above 12,000 feet. So that's just another version of it as well. But on ATIS, that was specifically dealing with ATIS on that last question there. You're welcome. All right, got about 25% of the class in. Got about 75% of the class in. I'll give you guys another 10 seconds here. All right, so we've got about 50% with A, 16% with B, and 33% with C. So kind of a little bit all over the place here. The correct answer when we're looking at this question is actually going to be A. It's McAlester Radio. So that's the first thing. When we contact flight service, it is something radio, whatever we call it, and then it's the word radio after that. That's kind of the dead giveaway on that one. So for example, if I was going to call up here in California, we have Hawthorne Flight Service, which is pretty prominent in the Southern California area. So that would be Hawthorne Radio. In this example, this is McAlester Radio. You don't actually need to say November, right? So that's another one as well. You don't need to say the N number. It's assumed that it's an N number. In the United States, all registered aircraft are going to be Ns. So in this case, it's just going to be whatever your call sign is. So 666 Charlie Bravo, the correct phonetics, not CB. That's not the correct phonetics on these. So that's a no-go. Receiving Ardmore Vortac in overs kind of in addition to that, but that's at least letting them know if it's required. Okay. So let's go ahead and look at the next FAA test question here, which is dealing with Federal Airways. A little bit of confusion on Federal Airways, but unless otherwise specified, Federal Airways include that Class Echo airspace extending upward from, go ahead and open up the test question for you. Is it A, 700 feet above the surface up to and including 17,999 feet MSL, 1,200 feet above the surface up to and including 17,999 feet MSL, or C, the surface up to and including 18,000 feet MSL? Yeah, Alex, unfortunately, I wish I had a shorter video on that. It's in the private pilot course under, where is it? It is located under flight instruments, I think. And it's like the last 5 minutes of it. But if you go look up, Alex, VD MONA, that's the acronym for compass errors, VD MONA. All right, looks like everybody's got their answer in. 14% with A, 28% with Charlie, and 57% of the class with the correct answer here with Bravo. So The correct answer, as stated, is going to be Bravo. And remember that Federal Airways are going to be inclusive of Class Bravo, Charlie, Delta, and Echo airspace. They are 8 miles wide, so 4 miles right and left of the main center line. And they will usually begin at 1,200 feet AGL and continue up to, but not including 18,000 feet. Or another way of saying it is up to and including 17,999 feet. Okay. So that is the correct answer. Mary, exactly. So remember, when we're looking at the Federal Airways, usually what you'll have is that that line, and it will usually say V12 or some number associated with it. That is the actual Federal Airways, or we also call those Victor Airways as well. All right, good job, everybody. All right, let's look at the airspace that's basically related to a part-time control tower. So airspace at an airport with a part-time control tower is classified as Class Delta airspace only. Is it A, when the weather minimums are below basic VFR, B, when the associated control tower is in operation, or C, when the associated flight service station is in operation? I'll go ahead and open up the test question right now. Give you guys about 60 seconds on this one. Thank you to our moderators who are on both chats answering those questions that folks have. So I appreciate that. Yeah, and the website, I have no problems. I'm on it right now, so I didn't have any issues accessing it if anybody else is having that issue. All right, let's go ahead and take a look at it. We got some stragglers hopping in right this second. All right, pretty easy one for this class. So in this case, we have about 100% with the correct answer here. Correct answer for this one is actually going to be B, when the associated control tower is in operation. So remember that Class Delta airspace, in any airspace, whether it's Class Delta and usually Class Charlie airspace, it is, while there is a physical control tower, it may not be manned or staffed 24 hours a day. So that's the reason why we want to check those green books, which is the chart supplement, formerly known as the Airport Facility Directory, and you could figure out when is that tower actually in operation. So here in Camarillo, our tower actually closes at 9 p.m., and then we revert to a Class Golf airspace. Now, some will revert to a Class Golf, and some reverts to a Class Echo. You have to figure that out inside of the chart supplement. So good job, everybody, on that one. That one seemed to be fairly easy. The next one is Class Bravo airspace in terms of what are the licensing requirements. And we saw some confusion with this one as well. I usually see people get confused on this even in our CFI class. So what minimum pilot certification is required for operation within Class Bravo airspace? Is it A, a commercial pilot certificate, B, private pilot certificate or student pilot certificate with appropriate logbook endorsements, or C, private pilot certificate with an instrument rating? Ladies in, you guys all got in okay to the website? No problem. All right, perfect. All right, got about half class in, just waiting for those stragglers, and we'll get that answered here. All right, got 0% with A, 90% with B, and 9% with C. So correct answer here is actually going to be B. It's a private pilot certificate or student pilot certificate with appropriate logbook endorsements. So the reason why this is sometimes confusing and this is usually confusing for CFIs, especially when we're doing endorsements for our own students, is some CFIs are under the impression that student pilots just can't go into a Class Bravo, period. Okay, and that's not actually true. Now, when we look at the exact regulations, so this is actually pulled directly from the AIM here in the back of the book. The main thing is that you either need to have a private pilot certificate at some airports, or just to fly inside the Bravo, like we said, you need to have either a private pilot certificate or student pilot certificate with the appropriate endorsements. At some airports, which are basically these right here, these 12 airports, a student pilot can fly within the Class Bravo airspace, the lateral bounds of it. They just can't land at that primary airport. So here in Los Angeles, for example, at Los Angeles, we can't let a student pilot go into LAX. I don't know why we'd want to, but you'd have to have a private pilot license or better or greater than that in order to fly into LAX. Now, Los Angeles International Airspace for the Class Bravo airspace is fairly extensive, and we have students at Santa Monica, and we have students to the south and to the east. And these students are always flying through the Class Bravo with those appropriate endorsements. It's just there's a handful of airports, these 12 airports, which happen to be the largest of the Class Bravos, which no student pilots may actually land at. Okay, so once you get your private pilot certificate, you can go into LA. You can pay the magical $100 landing fee. Dallas is actually kind of cool to fly into. It's $0 to land into DFW, and the gas is actually pretty darn cheap too. So just want to give you guys a heads up with that. All right, nobody likes these looking at them, but referring to the figure on the right, the line from point C to point A of the wind triangle represents what? Is it A, wind direction and velocity, B, true course and ground speed, or C, true heading and ground speed? I'll go ahead and open up the poll right now for you. All right, got the first folks throwing their answers in. Good luck on your written tomorrow, Mary. Give you guys another 20 seconds. All right, I am going to go ahead and take a look and see what we've got here. We got 53% with A, 23% with B, and 23% with C. So let's see if we can clarify this a little bit. So correct answer here is actually going to be A. It's wind direction and velocity when we look at it. So when we have it, from the line from point A to C or C to A of the wind triangle represents the wind direction and speed velocity. Answer B is actually incorrect because from C to B, that is the wrong value. And then when we look at C, answer C, which is true heading and ground speed, that's also incorrect because the value doesn't match up for wind direction and velocity. All right. So good job, everybody. I know these are kind of a pain when we look at them. All right, this one people seem to get backwards. Pretty common, but see if we can fix this as well. All right, so let's go ahead and take a look at this one. Poll is open. Which statement about longitude and latitude is true? Is it A, lines of longitude are parallel to the equator? B, lines of longitude cross the equator at right angles? Or C, the 0-degree line of latitude passes through Greenwich, England? All right, got half the class in. All right, let me go ahead and take a look at it. We've got 8% with A, 83% with B, and 8% with C. So majority of the class has the correct answer. So good job, everyone. It's actually going to be B. It's lines of longitude cross the equator at right angles. So remember, when we're dealing with longitude or latitude, the way that I kind of like to, I don't have a good picture for it, but if you want to think about it this way, if I draw the lines that basically cut across the equator and go up, those are lines of latitude. If you want to think about it this way, they are very similar to a ladder, right? You can basically go up and you can go down on those lines. Longitude are longer. So when I look at the longitude lines, they basically go from the North Pole to the South Pole and go like that, right? They're gonna go down. And you can think of it as like, I don't know, an ape maybe cutting across and grabbing it from rope to rope, kind of going left and right. That is the difference. Usually the latter one works pretty well with students, and then they know that the opposite of that is going to be longitude, the long way. So, all right, let's go ahead and look at density altitude. Which factor would tend to increase the density altitude at a given airport? Is it A, an increase in barometric pressure, B, an increase in ambient temperature, or C, a decrease in relative humidity? I'll go ahead and open up the poll right now. And the next three are going to be weight and balance questions. All right, got about half the class in. Just waiting for the other half. All right, got everybody in. 15% with A, 76% with B, and 7% with C. So correct answer here is actually going to be B. It's an increase in ambient temperature. So remember, what are the three factors of density altitude, right? So if we look at them, it's going to be your pressure, altitude, okay? And you can think of this as whatever the field elevation is of the airport. So if we have an airport that's at sea level, it's not going to be as affected by density altitude. It's still, depending on the other factors. But if we talk about a field that is, or an airport that is at South Lake Tahoe or Denver or Big Bear, those have higher field elevations and thus they're going to have higher pressure altitudes. The second factor is going to be temperature or heat. And then the third factor is going to be humidity, okay? So with humidity, if we have higher humidity, higher temperature, and higher pressure altitude, then our density altitude is going to be higher, okay? So an increase in ambient temperature is the correct one on that. All right, so with this, what you want to do is, hopefully you guys have a calculator out. I know these are not fun, like I said. I've got two of these questions, and then I've got that silly one with the fulcrum where we have two different weights on them and a plank, and we'll go over that. An aircraft is loaded with 110 pounds over maximum certified gross weight. If fuel, gasoline, is drained to bring the aircraft weight within limits, how much fuel should be drained? 15.7, 16.2, or 18.4? I'll give everybody about 2 minutes on this question here. All right, give you guys about another 60 seconds. All right, let's go ahead and see if we can start going over this. So in this one, we know that we are basically 110 pounds overweight. And the other thing that they're not telling us in this example, but something that we need to know, is what is the weight of avgas or gasoline in this point. So the weight of our fuel is basically equal to 6 pounds per gallon. Okay. So all we're going to do is calculate the amount of gasoline that we need to drain in this case. So what we can do is we can basically take 110, divide it by 6, and that gives us 18.33 gallons in this circumstance. And our best answer when we're looking at it is actually going to be C, which is 18.4 gallons. Okay, so just round up and choose the best answer that it would work for. Okay, let's try one more of these, and then we'll go to that fulcrum with the plank one. That'll take a little bit more time. Same question, but this one is 90 pounds over max weight. Once again, same principle of how to do it. I'll go ahead and open up the question on this one here. And what are we going to do? Is it 10 gallons, 12 gallons, or 15 gallons? How many gallons must be drained? Adios, Ryan. Take care. Thanks again for your help. All right, let's go ahead and start taking a look at this one. So same principles, once again, figure out how much you need to lose. So 90 pounds. And remember that we know that avgas or gasoline, in this case, I'm just going to call it avgas, aviation gas, okay, is 6 pounds per gallon. Okay, all you're going to do is take the 90, divide it by 6. And when we look at that, 90 divided by 6 in this case happens to be 15 gallons. So it actually matches up perfectly with C once again. And that is correct answer. Luckily, we got 100% of the class with that answer. So good job, everybody. All right, the next one, these are the ones that I don't even like, but they're pretty easy once we go through them. And I think we've had a few people in the class state they've had some problems with it. This is that silly little plank on a fulcrum. So I'm going to go ahead and open the poll. Looking at the image on the right, how should the 500-pound weight be shifted to balance the plank on the fulcrum? Is it A, 1 inch to the left, B, 1 inch to the right, or C, 4.5 inches to the right? I'll give everyone a 2 minutes on that. Happy birthday, Ryan. All right, about 60 more seconds on this. Remember, weight times arm equals moment. It's basically looking at that formula. All right, let's go ahead and see if we can figure this one out. You'll see how easy this actually is once we do it. But like I said, when most people look at these, it just looks overwhelming at first, right? So if you remember, weight times arm equals moment. And what we have here is we have several different weights. We've got 500 pounds at 15 inches. So we've got the weight and the arm. We've got 250 pounds and then 20 inches. And then we also have the actual fulcrum and the CG point, and it's also telling us the plank weight. Some of this we need and some of it we don't. So all you're going to do, set this up just like a basic algebra equation in this circumstance. So the known variables here are going to be how much am I going to move this 500-pound weight in terms of how much am I actually going to shift it. Now, all you're going to do is that's what we don't know. We don't know how many inches to the right or to the left it is. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the weight and I'm going to put 500x. And then on the opposite side, so everything to, basically I'm separating this equation. So everything on the left of that line and everything on the right of that line, you could think of this as a giant equal sign. That's one way of thinking about it because we need these to effectively way appropriate or basically balance at the end of the day. So one of the known variables that I have is right here, where I've got a weight of 250 pounds, and I know that it's 20 inches is the arm. So I'll put 250 and 20. Plus, I've got the weight of the plank and also the distance away from it. So the plank's total weight is going to be 200 pounds, and then the distance is right here, which is going to be 15 inches. And now I've got an equation that's set up, okay? So all I'm going to do is effectively take 500x, and that is going to equal, just remember, 250 times 20, and then 200 times 15, add up those two numbers, and that is then going to give us 8,000, okay? Now it's just solving for x. So when we're looking at this and we're basically just trying to solve for x, what we do is we divide both sides by 500. 8,000 divided by 500 is x equals 16 inches. Is everyone following along? Are you getting that? So now that we have it 16 inches, we look at the 500-pound weight, and what we were trying to figure out is, what is this supposed to be? Is this in the correct spot? Is it supposed to move to the left, to the right, and how many inches? Is it 1 inch left or right, or is it 4.5 inches to the right? Do we move this 500-pound weight? So when we look at it, it is telling us that this right here, this number, this x variable, is equal to 16 inches away from the center point, right where that equal sign is. Now, what you can see here is that if I move this block to the right, that would be getting closer, 14, 13, 12, 10, 11, okay? So what I need to do is I actually need to move it about 1 inch to the left, all right? So that is the answer there. It's A, it's 1 inch to the left. And that is how we come up with that information. These are, Alex is asking, are these the exact questions? They're fairly similar to the questions. This figure is pulled directly from the FAA testing supplement. So this is one variation. I think this is an exact question that they ask you. They may, I don't know how, I don't think they can change it in very many variations of the same question, okay? But this is how we're basically setting this up. We're treating it like an algebra problem. We're then solving for x because we don't know. This 15 inches is given, but at the end of the day, they're also telling us in order to get the right side to balance with the left side, we need to figure out or solve, is it truly 15 inches or is it greater or less than 15 inches from the center, okay? So Mark had it on his test, lucky guy there. So like I said, it's fairly simple when you look at it and you actually plug in the numbers. But at the same time, I know when people look at it, it's a very misunderstood question. There's a couple variations of this question. So don't get frustrated with it. If you have any more questions about it, let me know at the end of class or right now and we can go over it. But these are the numbers that we need. All right. So with that, I could see this was probably a problem. We had about 57% of the class with the correct answer, and then the rest of the class was split between B and C there. The arm, Sam, is going to be 16 inches. So effectively what we're trying to do is move that 500-pound weight to the left of that dotted line in order to get the right side and the left side to balance. Correct. So currently it's at 15 inches, but by figuring this out and saying it's at 16 inches, we need to know how much more do we actually need to move this thing right or left. All right. All right, let's go ahead and take a look at the next one here. There's no other questions. So Alex is asking before we move on, why is it to the left and not to the right? So think about it this way. This equal sign is the 0 marks. This is 0 inches. You could think of this as the datum, right? Where this little triangle is right here. So as I get away from it, it's basically going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, etc. It's going to get higher as we move to the left, and it's going to get closer to 0 as we move to the center point of that fulcrum. Okay, that's the reason why. All right. All right, let's go ahead and take a look at the next one, which is dealing with our wind components. So using the the headwind crosswind component chart on the right. What is the headwind component for a landing on runway 18 if the tower reports the wind as 220 at 30 knots? Is it 19, 23, or 26? I'll go ahead and open up the poll for you. Yeah, so Mary, on that one, I see you've looked at a lot of YouTube videos to try to get that. So if you move it to the right, the numbers are decreasing, right? So the X told us that it was 16 inches, and where the person physically put it in that image was 15 inches. So that means it needed to move further away from the datum or the fulcrum to the left. That's the reason why it's to the left. I think people overthink these questions, and I mean, like I said, even when I was doing these, when I was working my private pilot, they were challenging. All right, got about half the class in. I'll give you guys another 30 seconds on this. Remember, if you need the testing figures, they are found in the FAA testing supplement, figure 36. Oh, this one. This is the one that you're having trouble with, Mary? All right, let's go ahead and see if we can figure this out together. So the things that we need to know before we even look at the chart on the right is what is the wind angle and obviously the velocity. So we know what the velocity, which is 30 knots, but what they're giving us is we've got runway 18. So we're going to assume that's 180. And we have the wind of 220. So the easy way of doing it is you could always draw the runway if you wanted to, right? Just treating the top of the page as north and then the bottom of the page is south. So if we actually had a runway, right, we would be taking off south, which would be runway 18. And this is, then we would basically have the wind direction coming from this angle, which is roughly about 220 approximately. So we're basically just trying to figure out what is the difference between our takeoff direction and where the wind is coming from. So what you can do is you could take 220 and subtract 180, because remember, it's a runway. It's not 18, it's actually 180. We always end a 0 to the end of that, which is basically going to be our wind direction minus our runway heading. It's one way of looking at it. So 220 is going to give us that angle of 40 degrees. Okay, so that's going to equal 40 degrees there. Now what we can do is using 40 degrees and 30 knots, because we've got 30 knots at the top here. It's saying that it's 30. What we do is we come to the figure on the right, and what you're going to notice is we'll start off with 0, 10, 20, 30, and then 40. So this is what we want to follow, is we want to follow that 40. And what you're going to notice is that each one of these curved lines that makes up a semicircle, they will have numbers next to them. So we've got 40, 30, 20. And what we're going to do is we are going to basically follow this 40-degree line down until we get to 30 knots. So this one right here, this is 40. And we can see that if I were to follow this outwards. So if I were to follow this out to here, that clearly shows that it's 40. So I'm going to continue my line down. And what I'm going to do is where it 40-degree mark, all I'm going to do is I'm going to draw a line straight down from that mark and then straight across, okay, depending on what the question is asking. So if I draw straight down using my ruler here, best I can, and I basically draw a line straight across, the only thing that you need to really worry about is, and this is where most people get this question wrong, is what is it asking for? Now here, it is specifically asking for the headwind component. So the headwind component is actually on the vertical axis. The crosswind component is on the horizontal axis. So if I wanted to know what would be my crosswind if I took off, all I do is I read the number at the bottom under crosswind component, and that would be my crosswind. Now, some people are getting that wrong, and they're putting A in, which is 19 knots, which would be your crosswind component, but that's not what this question is asking for. Most people just jump to crosswind because that's what they're used to. In this case, what I'm going to do is I want to look at what the potentials are, and it is specifically asking for headwind. I've got 25 and I've got 30 up here. So this is approximately 23 knots, and that is how we came up with B. Does that make sense, Mary? Does everyone understand that? So with that, we only had about half the class get that correct, and then the balance was on A and C. For those that said 19 knots, that's because you just dropped your line down and you weren't paying attention. That is specifically asking for your crosswind component when this question is referring to the headwind component. So just read carefully when you're looking at it, you know, underline it or whatever you need to do to point it out. In addition to that, also remember, I kind of chopped it off here, so I am not letting you cheat. That example problem, that giant red line on A, B, C, and D, this right here is your cheat sheet, if you will, while you're on the FAA written, and it gives you everything step by step. The only thing that it's not telling you is how do you figure out that wind angle. And all we're doing is we're figuring out how many degrees off from where we're going to be taking off or from the runway center line is the wind coming from. All right. What's up, Nick? Mary, does that make sense? All right, the next two that we have are dealing specifically with weather. And when we're dealing with weather, we're just going to cover this briefly, just some airmets and sigmets. So Charlie is asking, do we have to make these calculations when flying? Yes, we do. Keep in mind that you may have a crosswind limitations, very, very common for very, very common. You know, as a student pilot, you're going to have a crosswind limitation of 3, 5, 6 knots, whatever your instructor deems is appropriate for your skill level. And you're going to have to abide by that. So what you're going to do is you're going to figure out where the wind is coming from. And then it's as simple as that. Where do we find the 220 and the 180? So once again, the 220, I am going to, doesn't give you runway or, well, it does give you runway or degrees. So let's talk about that real quick. I am just going to erase everything on the slide. Looking at the question, I think where people are getting confused is where did I get the 220 and where did I get the 180? Well, it's telling me that we are landing on runway 18, okay? So runway, I don't even know how to abbreviate it, but runway 18 is basically going to be 180 degrees, right? That is your landing runway. Now, the wind is coming from 220 at 30 knots. So we would get that if we're going to an airport, we would get that from the METAR, from the ATIS, from the AWOS, whatever it may be. And that is where we're getting those two pieces or those two numbers from. And then it's just a matter of subtracting the difference. We're basically subtracting 180 from 220 degrees, and the difference is basically going to be 40 degrees. There's 40 degrees off, okay? 18 is south, right? Remember, north is 360, south is 180, east is 090, and west is 270 if you treat it like a compass. So in this case, they are taking off to the south. The wind is coming from over here, which is about 220 degrees. So you can kind of picture that angle in your mind, okay? All right, let's go ahead and move on. This is dealing with weather. So I'll go ahead and reset the test question here. SIGMETs are issued as a warning of weather conditions hazardous to which type of aircraft? Small aircraft, large aircraft, or all aircraft? You're welcome, Naj. Does that make more sense, Mary, in terms of where we're getting those numbers? I'm hoping. All right, got about half the class in. Give you guys another 20 seconds here. And I believe there's about 2 more questions after that, and then we'll wrap it up. Perfect, Mary. All right, you guys are on a roll here. You got 100% with the class. So SIGMETs, as we're looking at them, 100% with the class, like I said, it's all aircraft, and it's going to advise weather potentially hazardous to everybody, not just a specific population group. I want to go ahead and go through one more convective SIGMET, and then we'll talk about SIGMETs here for a second. So what information is contained in a convective SIGMET? Is it A, tornadoes, embedded thunderstorms, hail 3/4 of an inch or greater in diameter? B, severe icing, severe turbulence, or widespread dust storms lowering visibility to less than 3 miles? Or C, surface winds greater than 40 knots or thunderstorms equal to or greater than video integrator processor VIP level 4? All right, just waiting for those last stragglers. All right, good job, everybody. We got 58% with A, 25% with B, and 16% with C. Correct answer is actually going to be A. It's tornadoes, embedded thunderstorms, and hail 3/4 of an inch or greater in diameter. So just as a quick reminder, this is on your check ride, and there's a variation of these types of test questions on the FAA exam. So if we were to just look at SIGMETs for a second, so remember there is SIGMETs and convective SIGMETs. So no matter what, SIGMETs are going to concern the safety of all aircraft, like we said. It stands for significant meteorological information. And these SIGMETs, which are really non-convective in nature, are going to be severe or greater turbulence over 3,000 square miles. Same thing, severe or greater icing or IMC conditions over 3,000 square miles due to dust, sand, or volcanic ash. Now, a lot of times there are some examiners out there that not only ask you what a SIGMET is, but you should be prepared to rattle off just a couple of these. And when we're looking at it, just know a couple of what these could potentially be. Some will ask you what conditions would warrant the issuance of a SIGMET or an AirMet, and these would be the following conditions as shown on the screen. If we're talking about convective activity, that would be a convective SIGMET, and these are dealing specifically with embedded thunderstorms or a line of thunderstorms. This is that VIP thing. I think I briefly mentioned it in class, which is the video integrator processor. So when you're looking at that, part of this, the reason why that was incorrect, that last one, is it has to affect 40% or more of an area of at least 3,000 square miles. And in addition to that, we also have surface winds greater than or equal to 50 knots, hail at the surface of 3/4 of an inch in diameter, tornadoes, or any of those combinations. When we're talking about the VIP, that is just how many circles are around the cell. So if we have one of those cells, you might have one, two, they kind of look like these weird little things that kind of look like this, right? And all you're doing is you're basically counting how many there are. That's 1, 2, 3, and 4. And obviously, the larger, the stronger activity is going to have more depth through that VIP level. And that's really all it is. Okay, it's a very old school technology, but that's still in the regs in terms of how it's written. All right, last FAA test question for today is dealing with our winds aloft chart. So I'm going to go ahead and open that one up. When the term light and variable is used in reference to winds aloft forecast, the coded group and wind speed is it nil and less than 7 knots, 9900 and less than 5 knots, or 9er and less than 10 knots? Yeah, the other way of kind of memorizing those questions, I used to just put them on flashcards. And with the flashcards, I mean, that's pretty much what I did with all my system limitations. And that, for me, that works the best. So, especially going into the airline industry when we had to basically do an oral every 12 months and we needed to memorize it. I mean, I still have the same flashcards that I used over the last 2 years for this stuff. So, all right, looks like everybody's got their answer in. 16% with A, 66 with B, and balance with C. So correct answer here is actually going to be B. And when we look at it, it is 9900 and less than 5 knots. So anytime that we're dealing with a forecasted speed on the winds aloft chart, the 9900 is going to be less than 5 knots. So that is basically light and variable is a term that we use. All right. So with that, if you have any more FAA test questions, like I said, feel free to go ahead and throw it in the chat here, and we'll go ahead and answer them. But I appreciate you taking the time, your Sunday afternoon here. And like I said, I'll stick around for just a few more minutes and see if I can answer any more questions moving forward. Yeah, I was actually going in my desk drawer. These are the original FAA test questions that I've had. These aren't even the FAA ones. These are the ones for the Ember Air that I used to fly. And these were the systems limitations. And I mean, these came in handy for all of the orals that I've done over the years. So unfortunately, if you want to go the airline route, they're basically going to have you effectively, do an oral every 12 months and a check ride every 12 months. So it's called keep your job. Okay. So other than that, I hope everyone has a fantastic weekend. Stay safe out there. We'll see everybody next week for the Sunday Q&A. And we'll see our youth aviation education folks on Saturday. If you are watching this, hope you guys had a good New Year's as well. But with that, like I said, if you've got any questions, let me know and we'll see what we can do. All right. Charlie, you're welcome, sir. All right, so a couple of questions that I see is effectively going to be something about compass turns. Is that what the specific question is? Just so I know. Let me go ahead and switch gears here. And let me go back to that question as well. All right, so exam for the private pilot will close on the 6th. Nick, you're welcome. All right, so what you have to do is for those that are having problems with the compass, like I said, the one that you're going to have to kind of know is ANS. That's the first one that we have, right? So accelerate north, decelerate south. The easy way to think about that is if you are truly on a, let's say we're on a westbound, that's the wrong side. We're either on a westbound, which is basically going to be 270 degrees, or we're on an eastbound heading of 090, and our airplane is effectively, let's say it's going from west to east. Okay, so it's basically flying 090. With accelerate north and decelerate south, one thing that happens is if this plane starts to speed up, let's say we're going to be going 90 knots here, and the airplane speeds up to 120 knots, what will end up happening is it will show with an acceleration, the airplane is not going to turn, but the compass will show a momentary turn towards north, even though that the airplane is still tracking to the east. And then eventually, once it stabilizes at 120 knots, it's effectively going to go back and the compass will show a 090 heading. In the event that you decelerate, it will show a momentary turn to the south. So same thing, I point the nose down, even though that we're tracking 090, and I slow back down to 90 knots. As I decelerate, it's going to point towards the south, even though that I am still tracking 090. Okay, so that's the ANS, accelerate north, decelerate south. The other one that we have for the compass errors, that's just one of them. There's several. So the ones that we talk about are VD, MONA. So we've got variation, deviation. So remember, variation has to do with the isogonic lines on the chart. East is least, west is best. Deviation is whatever it says on your compass card. We've got magnetic dip. So usually when we're a couple hundred miles, I think it's 160 miles from the North Pole, that weight inside the compass is going to lean heavily towards that magnetic, the magnet in it, and it's going to cause just erroneous readings. Oscillation, which is bouncing around. If you bounce around in turbulence, you're not going to get a good reading. And then we have MONA. So we've got the ANS, which is what we just talked about right here. And then the last one is basically our northerly turning errors. Okay, so same thing goes with this is that's that UNOS, right? So overshoot north and undershoot south. So same thing happens if we are basically flying north, which is going to be 360 degrees, or south, which is 180 degrees. We have to either overshoot it or undershoot it when we look at it. Okay. So if we are, let's say that we are flying once again in this general direction, and we start to make a turn to the south. Using this, we're going to undershoot south. And usually if you do it by about 30 degrees, it works out pretty well. So what you would do is you would start your right-hand turn, assuming that you're flying solely by the compass. And whenever the compass reads roughly about 150 degrees, because we're undershooting it, that's when we're going to roll out. It will start to stabilize, and you'll actually realize the airplane is pointed somewhere near south. Okay. Same thing goes if I was making a northbound turn. This is the one where I'm overshooting north. So in this case, I am probably going to go to a heading of about 330, okay, because I'm overshooting it in that left-hand turn, and then eventually it's going to stabilize on north. All right. So those are the two that you really need to know. Looks like a football playbook at this point. But those are it. And then VD Mona, I think we have an entire, I don't know, there's like a 10 minutes on that section. So if you need to review it, that's the main thing. All right. All right. Any more questions on that? Appreciate it, Teresa. Sorry for all the red, everybody. All right. What other questions do we have, if any? ANS is the term for that. Accelerate north, decelerate south. And then Mary, when we're talking about effectively turning right and left, it's the closer you get to north and the closer you get to south, the more predominant that those errors are going to be, at least on the overshoot, undershoot. And then when we're talking about acceleration and deceleration errors, they're pretty much the most predominant or most observable if we're going east or westbound. Okay. So WW is asking in number 43, the only cloud type forecast in TAF reports. The options are nimbostratus, cumulonimbus, or scattered cumulus. The correct answer is cumulonimbus. So nimbus meaning rain. So those cumulus clouds, that's basically those giant, big poofy clouds with the thunderstorms in them. That's the only type that we actually do. And when you look at it, what will end up happening is it's the only cloud type that we talk about in a TAF, and it will be codified as Charlie Bravo CB for the cumulonimbus clouds. Okay. Any more questions? Anybody else doing anything fun this week? Or had any good New Year's? You're welcome, WW. You're welcome. Have a great evening this Sunday evening. Flying on Tuesday. Awesome. I know one person here is taking their written tomorrow, so best of luck on that. Let us know how you do. Angela, your first solo was done. How was that? Was that pretty cool? Missy's going skiing after all the crazy people leave. You slept through it, Mark. And your 3-towered airport solo landings. You didn't get yelled at, did you, Angela? I always warn my students that I guarantee you get yelled at least once while you're soloing by a tower controller. And your instrument. All right, so you're getting there. You're getting closer to your check ride then. That's great. Just Naj, I know it's a lot of information. So once again, I mean, I did not know all this stuff overnight. Even when I got my private pilot, I still scratch my head to this day. And I think most pilots do after a couple years, where you think back and you're like, so I have my private pilot's license, but you know, amazingly, they actually let me have one. And if you want to think about it this way, it's really a license to learn. You're going to learn a lot more once you're leaving the training house or the schoolhouse, whatever you want to call it, or your actual, you know, day-to-day flight training. When you're kind of thrown out there without an instructor, you'll learn all sorts of things that you may have not been aware of. Okay. You got your PA 28140 out of annual. Yep. That's awesome. Except for the bill portion, I'm sure. Great job, Angela. So Allie is asking about the base of cumulus clouds of the surface. Air temperature is 1,000 feet. So with those types of questions, you need to know a little bit more than that. So what you do is you subtract the temperature minus the dew point, you divide it by 4.4, and then you multiply that answer by 1,000. That's the answer. So temperature minus dew point divided by 4.4, multiply that answer by 1,000, and that's going to be however high your clouds are. 4.4. Thank you for that, Mary. Naj, if you just keep practicing, so if you got a 65% on your practice exam or just one of the quizzes, then that just means it's a little, you know, it's just needs a little bit more work. So simple as that. Not going to come overnight, and you just have to kind of keep practicing. So practice, practice, practice. Nick K, you can take the final exam on the private pilot by Wednesday. So anytime Wednesday, that's the cutoff date for us. And then, yeah, if that's what you were referring to, 24 months. Well, once you get your endorsement, the endorsement is valid indefinitely, but once you actually take the official FAA exam, then it is only valid for 24 calendar months. At that point, then if you don't take your check ride, you're gonna have to redo it, unfortunately. It's available right now, Nash. So if you go to the website and go down to free online private pilot ground school, then go to lesson number 12 or final exam on the left-hand side. The final exam is up currently. Okay. All right. Well, if there are no more questions, I don't want to take up too much of your time. So like I said, I hope everyone has a great week. Thanks again for hanging out with us on this Sunday afternoon here. Other than that, take care, stay safe out there, everyone, and we'll see you soon in another future class. Take care, everyone.